times change, and every new innovation is eventually replaced by an even newer and better one. And just as technology caught up with the newsprint boxcars of the 20th century, it also caught up with another timeless classic of the rails. As you may know, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus is making its final rounds after more than 100 years of entertaining people around the country. Feld Entertainment, the owner of the circus, attributes the demise to changing tastes, which to me is just another name for technology. Smartphones, internet, digital TV, along with video game systems like PlayStation and Xbox, have all changed the way people both young and old view entertainment, especially timeless classics like the circus.
A dramatic change is in the works this morning for Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus.
The Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus will end its elephant acts this May, a year and a half earlier than originally planned.
It'll be your last chance to see elephants at the circus here in Philadelphia.
We begin with our top local story tonight. The world-famous Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey circus elephants are performing for the last time ever. And that occasion is right here in Rhode Island. Eyewitness News reporter Kim Kalunian live at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. She joins us live from the Providence Mobile Newsroom. Kim.
It's the end of an era for performing elephants at the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. These iconic animals, which have been used in the circus for over 2 centuries, performed their final act in Providence, Rhode Island on Sunday. The move may signal a shift in attitudes about animal entertainment. SeaWorld recently announced it would end live orca shows.
Bin schön, dass es eben durchgekommen.
Vielen Dank, Frau Junge. Telegramm von Göring.
Ja.
Er schreibt, mein Führer, sind Sie einverstanden, dass ich nach Ihrem Entschluss in der Festung Berlin zu verbleiben, als Ihr Stellvertreter sofort die Gesamtführung des Reiches übernehme? Mit voller Handlungsfreiheit nach innen und außen. Falls bis 22 Uhr keine Antwort erfolgt, nehme ich an, dass Sie Ihrer Handlungsfreiheit beraubt sind. Ich werde dann zum Wohle von Volk und Vaterland handeln. Es ist Landesverrat und Verrat an Ihrer Person.
Görings Sorge ist nicht so unberechtigt. Wenn unsere Kommunikationssysteme zusammenbrechen, und das kann stündlich geschehen, dann sind wir in der Tat von der Welt abgeschnitten. Befehle und Anweisungen können dann nicht mehr übermittelt werden.
XT3338, all clear track 301276, 1276, no switches by McNeil, over.
Roger, no switches 1276, that's 732 to 716, and ready to copy new, over.
Ready to copy.
Track authority number 1367, 1367. TV CSXT 3338, 3338. North NORTH. At Wallopin. Checkbox 1, track authority number 1276, 1276. Is Boyd. Checkbox 2, proceed from CP 697, 697. To milepost, HA 684, 684. Main track 1367, 1367 has 2 boxes, 1 and 2 of them.
Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus in the United States is closing after 146 years of clowning around. Now, the organizers blame declining ticket sales and high operating costs for the closure. Arabella Monroe looks at why the self-proclaimed greatest show on earth is disappearing for good.
For nearly a century and a half, this circus has entertained people across the United States. And people have rushed out to catch it one last time.
As soon as we found out the circus was closing, we immediately ran out and got tickets.
It's a shame. We as kids grew up with it. How about the kids that are here today? They're seeing it for probably the one and only time.
But for animal rights activists, this is a victory.
For more than 14 decades, Ringling Brothers have been abusing and killing their animal performers. We are so glad that this is finally coming to an end.
Ringling has said goodbye to its elephants, although it still uses other animals, including tigers. Ticket sales declined dramatically after the elephants were taken out of the act.
We saw a very sharp drop in attendance, much greater than we anticipated, and that's led us to this decision.
CEO Kenneth Feld's father bought the circus in 1967 for $8 million. It's been in the family ever since.
It's been through world wars, it's been through every kind of economic cycle, and it's been through a lot of change. It isn't relevant to people in the same way.
The two touring circuses will perform 30 shows before the final act in May. And then it'll be curtains down for the greatest show on earth.
Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus has announced that it will close for good in May, ending a 146-year run.
We're standing outside of Feld Entertainment Incorporated. They're the owners and operators of Ringling Brothers Circus, and later this morning around 10:30 they're going to hold a press conference to really confirm a lot of things we already know, that economic changes and heated feuds with animal rights activists really took its toll on the greatest show on earth in recent years. Elephants were removed from the show just last year, and as a result, ticket sales reportedly plummeted. Now, the CEO of Feld Entertainment has been quoted as saying the show has been through world wars and every kind of economic change. But even before the loss of the elephants, interest from younger audiences really wavered since the emergence of the internet and even video games. With the announced ending of the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus in May of 2017,
some of the final trips operated over the Norfolk Southern Buffalo line from Harrisburg to Wilkes-Barre. On April 2nd, the Ringling Brothers Red Unit completed its show in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and then moved to Wilkes-Barre for shows starting on April 6th at the Mohegan Sun Arena. The train left Monday morning from Virginia destined for Wilkes-Barre and ran over the ex-Pennsylvania Railroad Buffalo line and the ex-Delaware and Hudson Sunbury line to Buttonwood. With the end of the Ringling Brothers Circus performances, this is to be the last time the circus train will pass through Sunbury or over the Sunbury line. The train will leave Wilkes-Barre in a few days bound for Worcester, Massachusetts on Monday, April 10th, traveling north on the ex-Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western to Binghamton, New York, and then on the ex-Delaware and Hudson line to Albany, New York through Belden Hill Tunnel and through Oneonta. With the shutting down of the Ringling Brothers Circus, yet another era in railroading will end, just as it did with the use of the elephants last year in May of 2016.
LS 3002, if I had to guess, we've got 10 CDN in the first.
Hi, everybody! What? Are you coming to the circus? Yes. Good. You're live. I hope you're live. You're live. This is the welcome flag. You're live, guys. You're live. Everybody, you're live. Hey, Facebook.
LS 3002, you can drop the 3 step. Everybody's clear.
Roger, drop the 3 step.
Oh, look at you. You're way late. He messaged me and then he left like 2 seconds after. Didn't even say where he was going.
Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey Circus will say goodbye at an arena outside New York City Sunday in the final performance of the greatest show on earth after nearly 150 years. Capping a legacy that stretches back to the legendary 19th century showman P.T. Barnum, the circus bids farewell at a series of shows this weekend at a newly refurbished Nassau Coliseum in Uniondale on New York's Long Island. A worldwide audience will watch the last show Sunday evening via a live stream on the Ringling website. The finale, announced by parent Feld Entertainment Incorporated in January, comes a year after the company bowed to pressure from animal rights activists and agreed to stop using elephants in its performances.
Once the Luzerne and Susquehanna has the passenger portion of the circus train on its own tracks, the train's road power couples back onto the train again to take it 6 miles north to milepost 686 and its other connection with the L&S. Like what Buttonwood and milepost 692 once was to the Pennsylvania Railroad, Hudson at milepost 686 is the site of the old Delaware and Hudson Yard, which has long since been torn up. The track diverging off to the left is the Luzerne and Susquehanna, which used to be the D&H main line into downtown Wilkes-Barre. Once the rest of the train has been handed off to the L&S, they'll take it to Cunningham Avenue, where the cars will be offloaded and moved to the arena. From Hudson, the CSX Power will deadhead light about 13 more miles north to Taylor Yard, where it will tie down and await its next call to duty.
They say that the circus is a town with no zip code. Performers and animals traveling from community to community on the circus train. Well, this morning, it's one last trip home to Florida. Ironically, since they announced that the circus was going to go out of business in January, every show has been sold out, and Sunday's finale was no exception.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, who's ready for the greatest show on earth?
For 146 years, the circus was a constant source of fun and amazement, but no more. Among the 14,000 who crammed into the Nassau Coliseum to watch the final performance Sunday, former members of the circus and, of course, children like 8-year-old Rachel Maurer.
Do you know that this is the last time it'll ever happen? What do you think of that?
Sad.
The spellbinding acts and the quiet teams behind the scenes that kept the circus running all these years are this morning unemployed. Upwards of 500 people, including the Florida horse team, originally from Kazakhstan. 7-year-old Berenika was born between performances.
The show's closing.
My brain is understand, but my heart cannot take it yet.
Boycott the circus!
Animal rights activists protesting even this last show played a significant role in the circus's demise. Under mounting public pressure, Ringling retired its performing elephants last year. With its biggest stars gone, ticket sales dropped dramatically.
I am sad for the public.
18 years ago, Jonathan Lee Iverson became Ringling's first black ringmaster. Now he's the last ever.
The circus comes to town.
The circus, part of the fabric of America, was something few guessed would one day just die.
This is a family breaking up. You know, this is a culture coming to an end.
Sunday night,
We thank you for coming on out tonight to this historic occasion.
the ringmaster and the Feld family that owned the circus said goodbye.
This is the greatest show on earth.
Hugs, tears,
Should all acquaintance be forgot?
and that trademark phrase, one last time.
From the greatest show on earth!
The crowd was on its feet for the last 11 minutes of the show, crying, clapping right along with those who were down there performing. The elephants were retired to a sanctuary in Florida. The other animals will either go to other sanctuaries, or Ringling says some will go to circuses in Europe. And for anyone who's wondering if this is just a stunt, circus management says, not happening. It's over.
All the while, the shuffling around of people and equipment was taking place along the lines in Wilkes-Barre. Down in Nanacoke, the train 11A was patiently waiting for the main line to clear and its chance to proceed north to Binghamton, New York. Leading the charge on today's short manifest was an ex-Southern Railway SD40-2, rare itself on the main line nowadays, and a CP AC4400CW, a once common sight on this line.
Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey Circus will hold its final show in May 2017. CEO Kenneth Feld cited lowering ticket sales and the high costs of upkeep as the main reason for the circus to be closing its doors. Feld's statement said, "After much evaluation and deliberation, my family and I have made the difficult business decision that Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey will hold its final performances in May of this year." Ringling Brothers ticket sales have been declining, but following the transition of the elephants off the road, we saw an even more dramatic drop. This, coupled with high operating costs, made the circus an unsustainable business for the company.
Although the 7957 has no special significance as far as diesel locomotives go, it's not far off from the 7964, which is better known to rail fans as the 5000th GEVO built by General Electric. It's shown here in Linden, New Jersey, waiting for the next time that it can head back to the West Coast. So by now you're probably asking yourself, what in the heck is the Circus train's power doing on a southbound train 10A out of Binghamton, New York? Good question, and a good story. The problematic train 37T that I ranted about in 2018 was also the problematic train 37T in 2017, and in traditional problematic fashion, yesterday's 37T experienced locomotive trouble down in Lehighton. So with no other power available to assist, 047's power was called upon to drag the disabled train from Lehighton to Binghamton. And as such the procedure when power assigned to Taylor goes north, the locals are brought down from Binghamton on the first available southbound freight. In this case, it was today's train 10A.
hard to believe, maybe because it seems like it's always been there. But after 146 years, this circus is coming to town one last time.
So what did you see that you liked? Tiger.
Those amazing moments that had us holding our breath, gasping, and giggling. Now, vivid mental snapshots the next generation will not share.
It's a shame. It's an American icon.
Also vanishing, a way of life. 7-year-old Adriana is a fifth-generation circus performer, following in her family's clown-sized footsteps.
I miss everything.
Yeah, I miss everything.
Ulysses S. Grant was president when Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey first wowed our nation. Tickets cost just 50 cents.
What it brought to towns all over this country were the wonders of the world.
But Ringling says today the digital generation wants YouTube. Persistent animal rights protests led the circus to retire the elephant acts last year. Unexpectedly, audiences stopped coming. With the closing, the other animals will now retire to sanctuaries or European circuses.
We're all heartbroken, definitely. We all love doing what we do.
The final shows are sold out. One last chance to ooh and ah.
Oh my goodness!
And make lasting memories.
I'm glad she gets to experience it at least once.
The Big Top, folding up forever.
Farewell from the greatest show on earth!
Kerry Sanders, NBC News, Baltimore.
The end of an era for many of us, including many of us right here on this desk. A trip to the Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey Circus was a staple of childhood, but overnight we learned that the greatest show on earth is coming to an end, and ABC's Marcy Gonzalez is here with more. Marcy, good morning.
Hi, Dan. Good morning. This circus has been around since the 1800s, trying through the years to stay modern, incorporating technology, focusing on more breathtaking stunts. But in the end, it wasn't enough.
Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey.
After 146 years of flashy costumes, breathtaking acrobatics, and exotic animals, Ringling Brothers Barnum & Bailey Circus says it's taking down its so-called Big Top for good.
It's Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus.
For generations of kids and families, the circus's march into town was a call to fun and wonder. But for animal activists, the dazzling giant stars of the show,
And here come the elephants.
were a call to arms. In 2016, Ringling Brothers announced all of its performing elephants would be retired to an animal sanctuary in Florida. And in recent years, the fate of humans in the circus has been under scrutiny too. In 2014, Ringling was sued after this stunt went terribly wrong. 8 aerial performers hanging from their hair collapsed to the ground, leaving them hospitalized for months. And in 2016, audiences were stunned after a BMX routine ended with one daredevil rider motionless. The company said at the time the performer received immediate medical attention and was taken to a local hospital for further evaluation.
And there are still 30 more performances scheduled until the final bow set for May 21st in Long Island, New York. And circus managers say rising costs and declining ticket sales, especially after the elephants were removed from the show, all played into this decision.
Hard to see still because it's such an institution.
It is, but a lot of people also celebrating the decision, so some mixed feelings on that.
After juggling the numbers as best it could, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey Circus is folding its tent. Faced with declining ticket sales, the circus is rolling into town for its final performance 3 weeks from today, which means for anyone wanting to pass on the tradition, there's little time left.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to the greatest show on earth!
It is a pretty bold claim, the greatest show on earth. The Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey had every reason to brag. There was a time when there really was nothing else like it. Ringling was controlled mayhem, a dizzying array of performers risking life and limb, alongside a menagerie of exotic animals from faraway lands. After 146 years, all the thrills are still there, but the wonder seems to have faded.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Ringling's ringmaster, Jonathan Lee Iverson, laments that today, when kids go looking for the greatest show on earth, many look for it on their smartphones instead.
More and more, unfortunately, we're becoming a society that really doesn't embrace wonder anymore.
are you ready, my friends?
The wonder that we offer, you can't find it on Facebook. You can't find it on YouTube. You have to engage, you have to be there, you have to be present, and it takes relating to others, not like yourself. That's how this has been made.
A fact of modern life that brought the mighty Big Top to its knees. Over the years, the Feld sisters tried to help their father infuse the circus with 21st century sensibilities, while still keeping the show's 19th century traditions intact. But it was a balancing act that in the end just didn't balance their bottom line. Baraboo, Wisconsin is where Ringling's long run started. Their name is still everywhere here, as is the country's largest circus museum, Circus World. It was 5 Ringling brothers, Al, Alf, Charles, John, and Otto, who pitched their first tent in Baraboo in 1884 and began carting their variety act in wagons all around the Midwest. Eventually, they were big enough to buy their biggest competitor, the Barnum & Bailey Circus, and the combined shows brought amusement right to Main Street, USA. Its arrival was a heralded event. The circus train was more than a mile long. At each stop, both man and beast alike would be unloaded, and within hours, a vacant lot was turned into a canvas city. A lifestyle that took them through America's backyard in their tiny home on the rails.
And a home on the rails it was. The circus train has a long history of traveling thrills and entertaining audiences here in the Keystone State. In the early 80s, it's shown here on the ex-Pennsylvania Railroad Buffalo line in Montgomery. Even before that, in the late 70s or the earlier 80s, the circus train is shown on our own beloved Delaware and Hudson way back when it was still our beloved Delaware and Hudson. Fast forward to the 21st century, but still way back in time, a glowing sunrise greets us and the circus train, which you can just barely see on the siding at milepost 692. Further up the line and into town, in an area that comprised over a dozen tracks, now has 2. This was the site of the old Delaware and Hudson Yard in downtown Wilkes-Barre, where L&S number 50, whose Conrail road number can be seen showing through from behind, is putting together the Blue Unit show for its departure in June of 2004. The engineer at the helm today is Willie Hubb, and unlike today's train in 2017, this train will go south when leaving Wilkes-Barre. Also worth mentioning is that the circus train wasn't the only amusement train that came to the area back then. Also in 2004, about a month after the circus train highballed out of town, the James E. Straits Carnival train set up shop. Shown here on the same track that the circus train performers stayed on, L&S number 30 now does the work of moving the train around. And as you can see by these photos, Straits used to have a fleet of passenger cars that housed the carnival workers and that were lettered for the cities that the venue played at. But today's train no longer have any coaches and is strictly carnival rides and equipment with no passengers.
The animals, especially those elephants, had always been Ringling's biggest draw. they were also its Achilles heel. Animal rights advocates had long protested forcing wild animals to perform as entertainment. Feld spent years denying accusations of abuse and won more than $20 million in court settlements. Nevertheless, Ringling packed in their famous pachyderms last year. And that, says Feld, was the beginning of the end. There are, of course, other circuses, lots of them, in fact. But there will never be another Ringling.
Farewell from the greatest show on earth!
The 60-car red circus train of the Ringling Brothers and Barnum & Bailey Circus made its last run on May 23, 2017, after the last show was performed the day before at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum on Long Island, New York. The train moved to Conrail's Oak Island yard to be broken up and its equipment dispersed. At least 2 of the Blue Unit cars made their way to Steamtown, where they sit to this day on the Washington Avenue overpass. In 2015, the CP-D&H left the Keystone State for all time. In 2016, the 30T and 31T trains stopped moving between Canada and Enola and were cut back to Binghamton, New York. The trains still come through town, although now they're part of the makeup of the train 11Z. In 2017, we witnessed the last Air Products heat exchange take place, and now the Ringling Brothers Circus held its last shows in May of 2017. I've said it in other videos. Whether or not you actually like what you see in modern-day railroading, it's always better than not to document what's still around, while it's still around. Because even if you don't like it, it's always nice to have it around to look back on and reflect on and to pass on to future generations. In 2018, we lost the A-Team. That's what I like to call the 10A and 11A trains that you saw earlier in this video. Their symbols were abolished, and now they run between Enola and Northumberland as the H53 local turn about 6 days a week. In late 2018, the Norfolk Southern Regional Dispatch was centralized in Atlanta, bringing an end to the era on the NS when dispatchers were close to the railroads they watched over. For Trains 21, call me AC, and I end this video with this important message. Shoot it today, because you don't know if you're going to have it tomorrow.